Hi, in today's video I'm going to be covering switching from the standard version of Firefox to the Snap version and a couple of fixes to get it working with other programs. Now I'm on Ubuntu 20.04 and on later versions Firefox is automatically going to be installed as a Snap. So what I'm going to do first of all is cover switching from a regular version of Firefox to the Snap version. It's actually quite easy. But there were a few little gotchas to get it working with other applications. So first of all, if you've got Firefox already installed, what you can do, what might be a good idea to do, is actually back up your .mozilla directory just in case anything goes pear-shaped. So in your home directory, you'll see a .mozilla directory. It might be a good idea to copy that to your desktop. But I didn't have any issues, but it's always wise to create a backup before you do anything. So the first step is, if you're on 2004, is to actually install Firefox by running sudo snap install Firefox. Let me make that a bit bigger. Now what this is actually going to do is it will install Firefox. It won't remove your existing Firefox setup, but what it will do is it will actually copy your profile and all your extensions and all your settings into the Snap version of Firefox, so that when you launch Firefox, the Snap version, it will be exactly the same as your regular install. So, say first of all we install Firefox, and what it's going to do is say it's going to copy over all your settings and everything. And what we're going to do is, first of all, we're going to move the .mozilla directory to your desktop, because we're going to create a symbolic link that points to that location. And the reason for that is because what I do is I have a script down here that I use to launch Firefox in a separate Linux network namespace. And to get this to work, what we actually have to do is create a link from the snap firefox common.mozilla directory to our home directory. So if I just open up a terminal, come across here, so lsal snap, and what was the location? Snap firefox common, snap firefox common.mozilla. Okay, so this is the equivalent of the .mozilla directory that you'd have in your home folder with a regular version of Firefox. So basically what we're going to do is create a symbolic link from this location to our home directory. And basically what we do is we run ln space -s and then the source and then the destination. So the source is ~/snap firefox common.mozilla, and the destination is tilde, which is our home. So what that's going to do is it's going to create a symbolic link. Let's see, where is it? Mozilla here. Okay, you can see that .mozilla directory points to that destination. And the reason that I do this is because, as I said, what I do is run a script that enables me to put Firefox into a separate network namespace. So I have a VPN, and instead of sending all my traffic over the VPN, what I can do is actually set individual applications either on the command line or GUI applications to go out my regular connection or go over the VPN. And I do that with this script. Okay, so basically what this script does is it will launch Firefox and get the audio to work as well by setting the pulse cookie. And what we do is we have this thing called a BMF desktop file hint that actually points to the Firefox .desktop file that's going to be actually in varlib snapd desktop applications firefox_firefox.desktop, and a lot of snap applications have this naming convention, so like chromium_chromium, but this is where all the desktop files are stored. And then what we do is we actually run this command here, snap firefox current user lib firefox, and what that does is that actually launches Firefox. So what I do is basically make the script executable and copy it to my user local bin. And then after that, what I do is I create a a desktop file called firefox-vpn. And in there, what I do is run this command, user local bin namespace, which is a script I covered in a previous video, which I use with my VPN. And that basically launches Firefox by running the firefox-netns script in a separate network namespace. So I'll show you that in a bit, but a couple of things I want to cover is setting the path to Firefox in command line applications. So normally Firefox would be in user bin. So normally Firefox would be user bin Firefox, but as you can see, there's no Firefox in user bin. And the reason that's important is because in programs like surfraw or Newsboat, you can actually specify a browser to launch, but the way you do that, if I come across .config surfraw big, okay. So normally, this is the configuration file for surfraw, which is a command line application that submits queries to different websites. But basically, what you'd normally do is specify a graphical browser, and the path would be user bin Firefox. So basically, all you need to do is, if you've got a link that points to Firefox at user bin Firefox, you need to change it to snap bin Firefox. Once you've done that, it'll carry on working just like it did before. So let me come across and open a terminal. Okay. So I'll run surfraw and archwiki, say like xorg or something, or well, Firefox. Let's put Firefox in. And so what this will do, as you can see, surfraw submits the query to archwiki for Firefox, and it opens the page there. So that's the fix for surfraw. And again, basically, all we have to do is change the link from user bin Firefox to snap bin Firefox, and that will fix the issue. And it's the same thing for Newsboat Fig. If I just come across here, okay, you can see here in Newsboat, which is a command line RSS reader, you can basically open an article in a browser with a keyboard shortcut. And again, what I do here is, all I had to do was change the path from user bin Firefox to snap bin Firefox, and once I've done that, it'll work perfectly. So I'll just close that and come back across here. If I run Newsboat and just open something here. So I was pressing the keyboard shortcut there, and you can see Newsboat is opening the article in Firefox here. So let me just quit this back. And what you can do is, if you come across to the little hamburger menu, go help, about Firefox, what you'll see here is Mozilla Firefox Snap for Ubuntu. So you can see this 94 0.1. And as I said, basically you're gonna, if you're on Ubuntu, you're gonna be installing Firefox as a snap by default in future. So I just thought it'd be a good idea to actually figure out a few of the issues ahead of time. So that's basically some of the setup. And what I'll do now is show you this running in a separate network namespace. So what I'll do here is, first of all, I'm going to launch the firefox-netns script without putting it in a separate Linux network namespace. So firefox-netns, and as you can see, the browser's coming up with all my extensions and everything installed. And to get that to work, we had to create the symbolic link. If you don't create the symbolic link, as I showed you, wherever it was, I had it in the browser and closed it. Git servers Firefox snap. Okay. So as I said, basically the order of play is you install the Firefox snap, then what you want then what you want to do is move your .mozilla directory to your desktop, and then we're going to create this symbolic link, and again this basically will allow you to run Firefox with a script like this that launches Firefox here. So if I copy this line, snap Firefox current user lib firefox and come back into the terminal. Okay, you can see that's launched, and you can see I've got all my extensions there, and it's working perfectly. So that's the actual path to launch Firefox. So you've got two paths. You can either run snap bin Firefox like that, or you can also run snap Firefox current user lib firefox, but you need to create the symbolic link. You need to create the symbolic link from your home directory, snap firefox common.mozilla, to your home directory. And once you've done that, you'll be able to run Firefox by using this path, snap firefox current user lib firefox. And the reason for running Firefox like that is it actually gets around some snap sandbox issues, because if you try and run snap bin Firefox in a separate Linux network namespace, you'll get an error saying sudo snap could not update ns. So what I'll do now is come across and run start my VPN and then put Firefox into a separate namespace. So git openvpn sudo vpn netns, and this is basically a script I wrote that basically sets up the separate Linux network namespace. It also puts my Unbound DNS browser into a sort of separate Linux network namespace, so the DNS goes over the VPN and stuff. So I give it the authentication file. Okay, so what this is doing is it is starting up the VPN, and if I launch Firefox regularly, okay, this is just going off my regular connection, and if I go to a site that is blocked, like this torrent site rarbg.to, you'll see that it's not going to connect. So what I do is I then run Firefox, and you can see here I've got two entries for Firefox, two desktop entries, the regular one and -vpn. So I run this here and var.bg.to, and this is now running in a separate Linux network namespace going over the VPN. Continue. And you can see I have the site up as well. Now what I'm going to show you next is how I run my torrent client in a separate Linux network namespace. So if I just come across one. Okay, if I just come back across and open a terminal, what I have is a script called namespace that will basically take a command line application or a GUI application and run it in a separate namespace. So I run namespace torrents, which is another script I wrote that basically launches transmission in that namespace. So there we go. Where's the thing? Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I can find where's Emacs. Okay, Emacs. Right. Okay, so in the previous video I just did I covered how to copy a URL from a org mode link, and the reason this is important is because if I try and open this link in Firefox, I've got Firefox set as my default browser. If I try and open this, what's going to happen is, give it a second, it will come up, okay, Firefox is already running but is not responsive. To use Firefox, you must close the existing Firefox process, restart your device, or use a different profile. So there's actually an issue trying to, even though it's the same browser, because we're starting it slightly different in the network namespace, trying to open a URL that points to our regular Firefox, which is using SDG open, I think, will fail. So what I did was, in the previous video about Emacs, showed you how to copy a URL from an org mode link. So org toggle link display. So you can see this is what the link actually looks like. Two asterisks, brackets, the URL, and the description. So if I just come back across here, org toggle link display. If I was just to try and yank this, if I just yank that and try and paste it in, you'll see here we've got all the code. We've got the asterisks and the brackets, and we don't want that. So what you can do is basically run this little bit of code that I showed in a previous video. I can copy the URL, so I'd run Control-C-P, and that copies, it should do, the URL for transmission remote. So that's transmission remote running in a VPN over a separate Linux network namespace. So I've got both the torrent site unblocked over the VPN, and I'm also running transmission over the VPN as well. So all my traffic's going over the VPN. A lot of people that I know will use something like Opera, which has got a built-in VPN to download the torrents, and then they'll start up a torrent client, not realizing the torrent client is going over their regular connection. So that's important if you're using something like Opera and it's got a VPN and you download the torrents are still going over the regular connection. So this is useful because what it means is I can download Linux ISOs from here. Joke. and have it all downloading, but then still open up Chromium and say go to channel 4 or ITV and actually play stuff. And this is, by the way, if you're in the UK, this is excellent series, Valley of the Tears, well worth a look. But this is basically how I can have two connections going at once, one going over the VPN and all my regular traffic, going out where it normally does, so I can watch stuff in the UK. So that's some notes about this, and let me just bring up YouTube as well. And the reason why I want to do this is because this, I won't get the prompt coming up because I'm not in the EU here. So if I come across, let me just come across to DistroTube. Okay. Dismiss. Okay, so in another previous video, what I did was show you how you could use something called Empress, which is a sort of interface to the browser so that you can get stuff, information about what's currently playing in the browser. And what I did was created a script that will show a desktop notification. So if I press the script, if I press the keyboard shortcut, is it going to work? Maybe it's because I'm actually running this in the separate Linux network namespace. Let me just close this and bring up the regular Firefox actually. Okay. But basically Empress still works. So you can get the desktop notifications. Okay. And this always takes a few clicks. Yeah, come on. Okay. Let me just come back and see if I can get this working. Okay. Okay, there you can see. If I press the keyboard shortcut, you'll see it's bringing up this notification showing the artist, the player, the status. So I can
guys know I love
play and pause this.
I switched over
with keyboard
from
shortcuts, and Empress is still working, showing the desktop notification. So what I just wanted to show was that the Snap version is working fine. There's sort of no issues with things like Empress working with the Snap version. I think it was just when I was showing you previously, I had it in a separate Linux network namespace, and so it can't communicate between the two network namespaces. But that's basically sort of an overview of Firefox, a Snap version, and some things that you need to change to get it to work with other applications on the command line by changing the path to the Firefox binary from user local bin to snap bin Firefox. So, yeah, from user bin Firefox to snap bin Firefox rather. So everything's sort of working exactly the same. I can just kill that and quit the transmission client. So let me just come back to the Firefox thing, Firefox Snap. And again, if you already got Firefox installed, if you're running a later version of Ubuntu, you don't actually need to install it. But if you're installing it from fresh, basically run sudo snap install Firefox. The symlink is only really needed if you've got a particular setup like me, but running sudo snap Firefox will migrate everything from your regular Firefox into the Snap version. So once you've actually installed the Snap version of Firefox, you can actually remove the version you installed with apt. So you can run sudo apt remove Firefox, and it's not going to remove all your settings and stuff that are installed in the Snap version, but still, it may be an idea before you upgrade, before you switch from the regular version to Snap version, to back up your Mozilla directory just in case anything does go wrong. But I haven't found any issues with it at all. And the advantage is basically that you'll get Firefox updated quicker than the regular Debian package, because usually what happens is Firefox gets released like a new version or a new incremental version. And then you've got to wait a day or two for the Debian file to actually be built and put it into the repositories until you can update it. So basically, I updated to the Snap because it's coming, and I wanted to fix these issues ahead of time. And also, I was having an issue with trying to open links in a separate network namespace, and it wasn't working. And I had to come up with a workaround for Emacs to open links, copy the links. If I can open Emacs here. And just come down here into this bit down here, org mode, right down here. Okay. So in the previous video, what I did was basically showed you how you can copy the URL from an org link, and basically this is the bunch of code here, and this is the keyboard shortcut that makes it happen. And as I said, what that allows me to do is basically come across and copy the URL that comes to scratch. I can then paste the URL in. So that's useful if you don't want to open the link in the default browser. You want to just copy it and open it in another browser. And again, the other thing was setting up things like surf raw and newsboat. So newsboat config, any scripts you've got that point to Firefox at user bin Firefox, you need to change the link to snap bin Firefox. So this is newsboat, and come across to surf raw, and in surf raw you can see here I've changed the link from user bin Firefox to snap bin Firefox. And if I quit that, run snap bin Firefox, and that will open up Firefox like that. So that's a couple of issues with Snap and how you can get around them, how you can get your command line applications to open links in the Snap version of Firefox. And also, I said this is just my sort of peculiar setup for stuff, but what I do is, I said, I create the after removing the .mozilla directory from my home folder, I create a symbolic link from snap firefox common.mozilla to tilde, which is my home directory. And again, what that does is that creates that symbolic link there. And the reason for that, again, is so that we can actually launch Firefox with this link. Okay, so snap Firefox current user lib firefox, and as you can see there, that's opening Firefox with all my extensions, and that only happens after you've created the symbolic link. And the reason for running that is basically it allows you to get around some of the snap restrictions. So as I said, because I'm running Firefox in a separate Linux network namespace, if you try and do that running snap bin Firefox, it's not going to work. So that's why you use this particular path. And again, you need the symbolic link because otherwise what happens is if you just run this command without the symbolic link pointing to the snap Mozilla directory, you'll just get a fresh install of Firefox come up with no extensions and none of your settings. So I'll put links to all this under the video, but as I said, it's pretty painless switching from the regular version to the snap version. What I found is on older hardware, I've got a MacBook Air 2011 running Ubuntu 2004, exactly the same setup as this, and it's got about 4 gig of RAM, and it did like take about 10 seconds for the snap to open first time, but after you've opened the snap the first time, it will be quicker to launch. It will launch in a second or two. It's basically the first time you launch the snap application, what it does is it sort of it has stuff stored in sort of compressed images, and it uncompresses it or something, and that's why it sort of takes a little while to get it working. But there's no issues. 1, 2, you can see it sort of loads up relatively quickly, and you can check again that you're running the snap version here about Firefox, and it'll show you 94.1 is the current version. It just means you're going to get the updates quicker, and if you're not, if you're already on a later version of Ubuntu, this will probably be set up for you automatically. But it's just some things to get around, finding where the binary location is in Snapbin Firefox, so that you can open links from other programs, and also how it handles external things like Empress. As I said, showing you the desktop notifications. It still allows sort of access. One other thing I should mention though, which is rather annoying, and there doesn't seem to be a way around it. If I come into my downloads folder, you'll see I have a folder called firefox.temp, and this is the I think this is like where stuff gets. This is the Firefox download folder, and you can't remove this. If you remove this, it's just going to come back. There may be a way to somehow change the path for this, but it needs to be in your home directory, so I don't know if there's a way around that. But that's one annoying thing about the snap version, is it does create this firefox.temp directory in your downloads folder, and although you can delete it when you start Firefox up again, it's going to recreate it. You don't get that with the Chromium. The Chromium snap doesn't create a chromium.temp file in your downloads folder, but Firefox does. So if you're wondering why you've got this file, that's why, and it doesn't look like you can actually do anything about it. Basically, it just gets recreated every time you open up Firefox. And so there may be a way around it, but I haven't found it as yet. So that's just another little thing about setting up Firefox in a snap. But again, all you've got to do is install Firefox. That will then basically copying all your settings over, and then what you can do is, I said, you can copy the Mozilla directory, back it up somewhere if you're paranoid, but then you can do a sudo apt remove Firefox, and it will remove the older version of Firefox, but it won't remove the snap version. And then basically you'll just have the snap version installed, and I think it just sort of automatically updates Firefox in the background, so you'll always have the latest version. And this was just a couple of tips about the location of the .mozilla directory in the snap. It's snap firefox common.mozilla, and again, the other path, the sort of unrestricted way to launch Firefox that gets around the snap stuff is snap firefox current user lib firefox, whereas the other version is snap bin firefox. But the snap bin firefox kind of launches it with the restrictions, and launching it this way lets you run Firefox without some of the restrictions, which I need to do for my particular setup. But again, that only works if you've created the symbolic link. If you just run this without the symbolic link, it will launch as a brand new instance of Firefox. So these are some of my notes on my particular setup. Basically, the script that I use, and then also the desktop file. So that's user local share application. So that's where you put your desktop files to launch applications. And in this file, basically, if I just come down, okay, you can see here. Why is it not doing that? Ah, there we go. So yeah, this is how I launch Firefox. The namespace script I showed you in a previous video, and then the firefox-netns script that I showed you up here, which is basically runs Firefox, gets the audio to work, and launches Firefox without some other snap restrictions, which again is useful if you want to manipulate Firefox, put it in a different namespace, because snap bin Firefox won't let you do that. It will give you an error saying something NS couldn't update NS, snap couldn't update NS namespace or something other. So that's some of the pros and cons of Firefox. It's easy to migrate. It'll copy all over your settings over and everything. But there are a few things you've got to change, like for command line applications, you've got to change the path from user bin Firefox to snap bin Firefox. Once you've done that, it'll be fine. So I haven't noticed any issues apart from the rather annoying firefox.temp directory that creates, and there doesn't seem to be a way that I've come across to actually to change that location or remove this file. So if I remove that and restart Firefox, it's just going to create it again. So that's some notes on Firefox snap version, and say it's pretty much the same as your regular Firefox. You know, maybe takes a second or two longer to launch, and again, first time you launch it, it's going to take quite a few seconds to decompress the image, but once you've done that, it will be, you know, perfectly fine. A second or two, no big deal. So that's just some of the things I've come across, switching from the regular version of Firefox to the new snap version. And I'm 2004, but if you're on a later version of Ubuntu, I think you'll automatically be upgraded to the snap version anyway.